Hi, my name is Aleks. I'm 35 years old and I originally come from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the book I Am What I Am, which was written by young LGBTIQ people with minority backgrounds who are part of the youth group in Skeiv Verden. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about my story, reflecting on the stories from the book. This book, I Am What I Am, is about courage, love, patience, fight. It is about something intimate and personal, but most importantly, it is about empowerment. So it is not. So I want to start with the message in the beginning of the book that the youth group wrote, and it says, we are the youth group from Skeiv Verden. We are the future. Maybe you can't see us, but know that we are here. Know that we are here. So even though these stories from the book are anonymous, it doesn't make them less visible. On the contrary, it marks the visibility of something that has often been forced to stay invisible. It marks the resistance to oppressive systems and the affirmation of our very existence. So it is not always easy to share our stories, especially the stories that have been often have been denied, cancelled, silenced, or that have never even been told before. I shared my story many times while I still was living in Bosnia as a trans activist. And this is just a small part from media, but I shared my story many times, every day, everywhere, because my gender identity expression were questions at all times, and I had to explain myself and defend myself repeatedly, which often led to harassment, discrimination, and different types of violence. But even though I didn't have that sense of belonging where I lived there in Bosnia, I still did find that sense of belonging within the queer community there. And that gave me strength to fight for myself and to repeat, to retell my story all over again. But living here in Norway, when I came here, I didn't have that kind of a sense of belonging because of different culture, different language. So all of a sudden, from being a stranger in Bosnia because of my transness, I suddenly became a stranger here because of my migrant background. That again caught me in this in-betweenness, but I am what I am because of this in-betweenness, and I wouldn't change it for anything now. But it wasn't always like that. There was times when I was younger, and as I have a Muslim background, I used to pray a lot to Allah. So I used to pray to that Allah would turn me into a boy the next morning, and that everything else was a nightmare. Or I would run towards the rainbow every time it would appear on the sky, and in hope to reach it and finally become a boy. But as that was a fantasy, so I instead tried to be a girl, a good girl as they wanted me to be and as they expected me to be. But that didn't work. But I still tried, and it only brought another trauma. Which brings me to one of the stories from the book, which is called The Journey to Being All of Me. And it is about a young gay man who was growing up in Somalia. He lives in Norway now. And about his struggle between sexual identity and social expectations. And he says from the book I'm going to read now, growing up as gay in Somalia was not easy. I remember waking up in the middle of the night praying to Allah to make me turn me straight. I remember crying every night and thinking that hell was waiting for me. And he was, even though he tried so hard to be more feminine, to date girls, it was still not enough for others, and they would continue bullying him and calling him derogatory names. But at least he had the support from his family, which brings me to another story, and it's not all, we don't always have that kind of support. another story. It's called Mama, and it is about a girl who came out to her mother when she was 11 years old. And she describes the relationship between the two of them as how it was before she came out and how it was after. Before coming out, they had a really good relationship, even had their own secrets. Her mother used to tell her that she can tell her anything. But then when she came out as lesbian, she wouldn't accept that. As she says, you said we were Muslims, I didn't believe in those things. But I had one belief, and that was belief in myself, and that nothing was wrong with me. And it often takes a long time till we get to the point where we acknowledge that there's nothing wrong with us, but there's something wrong with societal norms. I remember my dad when I was younger. He used to say if he had a child that was gay, he would give them up or resent them. And that terrified me. But today my dad is, the situation is different. He's proud of me, he supports me, and even corrects people on the street when they ask him about his daughter. He tells them that he doesn't have a daughter, but a son. But it took us a long time till we got there. It took us, it didn't happen until 5 years ago, so it took us only 30 years. But it's good. Some people don't get that for their lifetime. Unfortunately. Another story that it's called Submission. It is about young trans man who had to leave his country because he was not allowed to be himself, and he was imposed this traditional role of a woman. And he says, it wasn't realistic to live like this for the rest of my life. After doing a lot of research, I came to the conclusion that there's no possible way for me to continue living in my home country, so I decided to come to Norway because I had a friend living here and it would be easier than moving somewhere knowing no one. And it was hard for him to navigate this kind of escape from his country because his parents almost at all times had his passport with them. So he had to wait for a moment when that passport was out of their sight, so he can basically take it and run and leave everything behind. And this brings me back again to my story and my life in Bosnia, which was kind of very hard. And it was living there as a trans man. I had no rights. Didn't have access to needed care. I was not treated well, so I had to do something about it. I knew I had to leave, so I made a plan to study hard, be the best student, get a scholarship abroad, and just get out of there. And which I did. And in 2013, I came to Norway to study at the University of Oslo, and I applied also to masters here because I have a cousin here who lives, so it was easier knowing someone. And in the beginning, I was happy, at least summer. I created that illusion. But very soon, all the traumatic experiences that I never had a chance to process came like a boomerang. Another country, another culture, another language, other people, rules. There were rules and order. And I wasn't used to that. I was used to life, chaotic life. My whole life has been chaos. I was chaos. I experienced the Bosnian War in 1992 when I was 7 years old. And I lost my home in that war. Some close people were taken by the same war. That war scarred me for life. And I never even had a chance to process any of that or reflect on what happened, as there was another war going on inside of me. And it made it even harder because after the war we lived over a decade in poverty. So it was very difficult at that time. So I have been living here for 7 years, and I still kind of feel that I'm in 2 steps backwards. It was not easy to stay here. If I hadn't married my partner, who is Norwegian, maybe I would not be standing here and telling you all this today. But because the requirement to stay, it was when I finished studies, I would have to find full-time job in my profession, which was kind of impossible for me back then, especially with the language barrier. I didn't have access to trans-Pacific healthcare because the diagnosis that I had from another country was not accepted here. So I had to be reevaluated, which lasted for 1.5 years. And in that time, I had to make sure every time I went to Bosnia to bring a lot of hormones, sweating over borders and passport controls, and hoping not to get into trouble because of that. And I also had to have a surgery in another country in that period because I didn't have access to needed care here. I had to have surgery paid from my own pocket in another country. Still have my dead name on the documents, on my personal documents. I know I can change them here, but it would make more confusion probably on borders and passport controls, as my only valid traveling document is Bosnian. And I can change name in Bosnia, but it would take a long time, and I have to be there and go through all the institutions who kind of traumatized me in the first place. So and to change gender marker there, I would have to be sterilized, and I don't want that. So I had this fantasy about being free and about freedom somewhere there abroad, but then that changing geographical space doesn't necessarily bring freedom. Which brings me to another text from the book that I really like, and this is a short text. It says, "The price of freedom is not small. It will cost you the moon and stars." So it is hard because almost always freedom is conditioned by certain apparatuses, and the capitalist system we are all interpolated in, it is compromised and negotiated. So that is why it's very important to share our stories, to speak up for ourselves, to share our battles, ups and downs. It empowers, it can be liberating, it acknowledges our existence, and it gives strength to others. So I want to finish with last quote from the book that is that one young trans woman wrote, and I really like this part. It says, it translates to be yourself is golden. It means so much. So there will be ups and downs in life, but nobody should ever be denied the right to be themselves. So freedom for me is to be able to stand here today and to share my story for those who still can't, for those who dare to write their stories in this book, and for those who feel alone, lost or hopeless, and for myself, because I am what I am. Thank you.